Hello, good morning friends. Welcome back to Telugu Computer Channel. Today we will discuss about communication in ICT. This is intended for B.Ed students. Aristotle tells about the communication that if a particular person is unable to live in this society or he is sufficient to himself, means nothing is required or no person is required, without any person he can live himself. Those type of persons are known as beast or god. Beast means an animal or he is a god. Who is animal or who is a god? The person who can live himself, means without any help from any person he can live himself, or the person who does not need this society for living. That person is known as beast or god. Today, in this competitive world or this business world, the media is selling their goods, services and their opinions, and they are creating dramas and cinemas. All this for creating humorous things or laughing. In simply, we can say that all these media is communicating with us. Means whatever they are telling, that is understood by us, and we are giving response for this media. For example, if a particular media is giving an ad to sell their goods, they are communicating, and we are purchasing their goods. That is nothing but the communication. In fact, no man in this world is complete. Every person has to depend on some other person, because the man is a social animal. We cannot live in the society without the help of any other person. If we need to communicate to transfer our ideas, concepts and information. For example, in our family, without discussing with our father, mother, brother, whoever may be, and in this society, without communicating in this society. For example, a vegetable vendor or a bus conductor or an auto driver or a shop, everyone, all these things are known as society. Without this society, we cannot live. Next, evolution of communication process. How the communication was developed. In ancient days, the persons are able to communicate by drawing some figures on the earth's surface. You can see here, in order to communicate with some other person, they are drawing some pictures on the earth's surface. By using this, they want to communicate with one another. That is the communication process in ancient days. After that, gestures were introduced. Gestures means by moving their hands or lip movement or face movement, one can able to communicate with another person. For example, nowadays also, if a person belongs to Andhra Pradesh and another person belongs to Odisha, they does not their languages. One person knows Telugu and another person knows Odia, but they are unable to communicate. By shaking their hands or their face feelings, one can communicate with another person. This is known as gesture. And after some time, literature was developed and the characters are developed, and they are able to communicate with the sentences and the written language. And after that, communication was developed. In nowadays, the radio signals, with the help of the radio signals and the mobile signals, and by using the computers and by using the Wi-Fi connections, by using the smartphones, a particular person in this world can communicate with any other person in the rest of the world. That is the ability of the communication process nowadays. And what is communication? Communication is the transmitting of a particular meaning from one person to another person. So for example, if a particular person, whatever he wants to communicate with another person, if the other person can understand whatever the first person is telling, that is known as the communication. The communication is usually by the way of a stimuli. Stimuli means verbal symbols. By using these verbal symbols, we can modify the behavior of another person. That is known as stimuli. For example, if you are going for purchasing some vegetables and we are telling that we need some 1 kg of some vegetables, the vendor can understand whatever the behavior of ours, and he will give 1 kg of some vegetables. That is nothing but we are going to change the behavior of the other person. That is known as stimuli. And this behavioral change occurs when some information is passed from one place to another person. And one people can influence another person by using this communication. And there is some elements of communication. Actually, there are 7 components are there. These 7 elements are there. These are sender and ideas, encoding, communication channel, receiver, decoding, and feedback. Actually, for example, if a particular person wants to communicate with some other person, first of all, a particular person will think something that I want to send this message to that person. Here, first of all, a particular sender is there, and in the mind of the sender, some message is there. And this message has to be communicated to the receiver. How the message will communicate? The message may be communicated by verbal or by written or by gestures, whatever it may be. Means the message has to be converted to something. That conversion is nothing but encoding. That may be written form or verbal form or some gestures. And after encoding this, it will be passed through media. For example, if I want to pass a verbal message, it will pass through the air. Or if I want to communicate a written message, that may be by the way of SMS or by the way of something like internet. And via some media it is going to the receiver. And after receiving to the receiver, first of all, the receiver has to convert this and he has to analyze this. That analyzation is nothing but the decoding. After analyzing this, he will understand whatever the sender sends. Then the receiver understands, and again the receiver will send the feedback to the sender. That is, he will give the response to the sender. Whenever the receiver will give the feedback to the sender, again the same process will continue. Means the receiver will generate something in his mind, that is the message, and he will encode this, and again by some media it will send, and again that message will be decoded by the sender, and the sender can able to understand. And in between this communication, some noise is generated. Is noise is nothing but, for example, if I want to communicate by some telephone line or mobile, if the signals are not good, some noise or some disturbances may be there. That is known as noise. And one more thing is, if I want to communicate something, but whenever I will communicate, I will communicate some unnecessary things. That is nothing but noise. Means whenever I want to communicate some message to some other person, apart from the message, I will give some more unwanted messages. That is known as noise. Now we will discuss about the types of communication. Types of communication, if you can see the figures, the first one is horizontal communication. Second thing is vertical communication and diagonal communication. Apart from this, formal communication is there, informal, downward, upward, and non-verbal communication, verbal communication, oral communication, and written communication. We will discuss in detail one after another. See here, formal communication. Formal communication is a planned communication. For example, if you are going for a meeting at particular time at particular place, that is known as formal meeting. For example, in our office at 2 p.m. today, there is a meeting between the employees and the management. That is known as formal communication or scheduled communication. And next thing is informal communication. Informal communication means, for example, if we meet some person or our friends at the restaurant and we are going to communicate, that is nothing planned. It is known as informal. For example, we are going in a bus and we met some old friend and we are going to discuss. That is known as informal communication. That means there is no such planning is there. Casually, whenever we are meeting to a particular person, we are going to communicate. That is known as informal communication. Next, there is downward and upward communications. Downward communication means, in a particular organization, if a boss is giving some instructions to the subordinates or the employees, that is known as downward communication. That is from top to bottom. And again, some bottom to top communication is known as upward communication. Upward communication is nothing but, If a particular employee is giving his report to the boss, that is known as upward communication. And next, horizontal communication. Horizontal communication means if two friends are discussing, or in a particular organization, if two same cadre employees are discussing, that is known as horizontal communication. Next, vertical communication means from top to bottom, means a boss and their subordinates and the low level people. That is known as vertical communication. That is one sided, from top to bottom. Again, the bottom to top, the reverse side is also vertical communication. And next thing is diagonal communication. Diagonal communication means, for example, if you can see this figure, if a particular there are in a for example, in an organization, there are three subordinates are there, and under them again there are some employees are there. One department's lowest employee is going to discuss with the highest person in another department. That is known as diagonal communication. And next one is non-verbal communication and verbal communication. That may be with the help of gestures or something like this, or by the verbs or the language. And one more thing is oral communication or written communication. Means if I want to deliver our communication by the way of speeches, that is known as oral communication. If I want to communicate with some other by with the help of some letters, that is known as written communication. And now we will discuss about the barriers of communication. Among them, the first one is language barrier. Language is a very big barrier. Why? Because there are several languages are there in this world, and one's language cannot be understood by other language persons. That is, for example, if a particular person from Odisha and another person from Andhra, those persons they are having their own languages. One person is having Odia as language, and another person is having Telugu as their language. They are unable to communicate with their languages. Why? Because they don't know each other's language. That is a language barrier. And next thing is a psychological barrier. Psychological barrier means, for example, there are some misunderstandings are there in between the cadres of the people. For example, in our house, our father, mother, and grandfathers are there. We cannot share our ideas clearly with our fathers or some elders. Why? Because there is some age gap is there, and there is some barriers are there. And in the same manner, for example, in a particular organization, some boss is there and some subordinates are there. The subordinates cannot communicate with their boss very frequently. Why? Because they are having something in their mind, some fears are there. These are known as psychological barriers. And one more thing is, sometimes some argument may be there within their persons, but whenever you are communicate, some misunderstandings may be there. Whenever you are having some misunderstanding, next time whenever you are going to communicate with that person, we cannot freely communicate with that person because of this misunderstanding. That is known as psychological barrier. And next thing is cultural barriers. Cultural barriers is nothing but in this world everyone is having their culture, and we cannot support the culture of another person. Means we are having our own culture and some other are having their own culture depending upon the geographical regions. This is a very big barrier, that is known as cultural barrier. And the next type of barrier is known as attitudinal barriers. Attitudinal barriers is nothing but the first one is, for example, if we see gender. Gender means if a particular male person is there and he cannot communicate with a female person. For example, if a male person can communicate freely with another male person, but he cannot communicate freely with a lady person, or the two ladies can communicate very freely, but whenever it comes to a gender, the lady cannot communicate with the gender. That is known as the attitudinal barrier. And also race and religion also plays very important role here. Why? Because, for example, if you will see in a particular religion, means for example some Muslims are there, they will go to their mosques, and they are having something like they can communicate freely with one another. For example, there are Hindus are there, they are going to the temples and they can communicate freely with one another. But whenever the religion is different, some gap is there. That is known as attitudinal barriers. And next thing is organizational barrier. Organizational barrier is nothing but the gap between the cadres. For example, in a particular family, some hierarchy is there. Means there is Hierarchy means the father is, mother is in a hierarchy position, and in the lowest hierarchy, the next step, the children are there. There is some age gap is there. Because of this age gap, the children cannot communicate all these things to their parents. The parents cannot communicate all the things to their children. That is known as hierarchical problem. And one more thing is, in a particular organization, in that organization, several cadres may be there. Something like the top level management, after that the second level management, after that the employees. And because of these gaps, a particular cadre people cannot communicate to another cadre people. That is known as organizational barrier. And here the conclusion is, we must overcome all these barriers, and if we will communicate well, then we can get more in this highly competitive world, and we can survive. So we want to develop our communication by removing all these barriers. Thank you for watching this. Thank you very much, friends. Please like this video and share this video, and please subscribe to Telugu Computer channel. Thank you very much. Bye bye.